Oh, okay, interesting. I am Jake from Blowback Airsoft, and we are going to be talking about CO2 magazines and how well they work below freezing. Now, for those of you who don't know, what is CO2? So CO2 is regarding these little 12-gram capsules right here, which are carbon and 2 oxygens, if you don't know what carbon dioxide is. Why is CO2 good to run in pistols, or rifles for that fact? First and foremost, they increase recoil, and they also increase wear because of that. So if you want harder recoil, CO2 are a great shout. So these little 12-gram capsules screw into the bottom of your magazine and will help your gun when it comes to low temperatures. Now, how does it do that? Well, these are higher pressurized little capsules than a normal gas magazine can hold. So the idea is they stay more consistent below freezing. So why should you run CO2 over your traditional gas magazines? This is a two-pronged approach to figuring out why we do this. Now, the first prong is to do with your gas efficiency. As you fire from a gas magazine, the temperature will drop of the magazine, which is going to mean it's going to have a lower pressure, which means that as you go through the mag, it will go plop, 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 and it'll sound a bit sad. Just some speed softer tears. How do we counter this? So many people, such as myself, have switched to CO2. CO2 gives you the advantage of increased recoil through a higher pressure coming out of the gun without necessarily increasing your FPS too much. However, it's not just as simple as higher recoil and more efficiency through the shot. The disadvantages, of course, of running CO2 is these bulbs will only last so long. So depending on the gun, these bulbs can last from sort of 2 magazines to 5 to 10. Really depends on the gun. Now, obviously, more recoil is going to increase more wear. If your gun isn't particularly well built, you will run it down faster and things will break faster. It'll expose the weaknesses that already exist, is the better way of putting it. So if your gun is a pile of shit, don't run CO2 through it, guys. That is how you blow one up. So aside from increased recoil and then obviously the increased wear that comes with it, what other things to think about before you run CO2 through your gun? CO2 will in fact set you back more. So when compared to something like this, which is just regular green gas, this whole bottle cost me about £6, okay? And it will last me a lot of shots, especially on pistols. What's to think about? Each one of these capsules, I think I bought 100 of them for £25, so that works about 25p a mag. Gas will work out cheaper than CO2 capsules. The exception is where the CO2 mags really come into their own. Now, that is in extreme low temperatures, because you'll have to switch to either power-up gas or red gas or whatever, and those bottles of gas will run you a much higher cost. That is where these come into their own, because although they are more expensive on the initial outlay, compared to other gas types like black gas, these work out far cheaper. Now, the real test we're going through today is how well will CO2 perform when it's put in a freezing cold condition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this magazine right here into my freezer right next to the peas, and we're going to see how well it performs in extreme freezing temperatures. So before we put it through, we're going to just prove this magazine works absolutely fine. So magazine, CO2, and we're going to grab this right here, so gun's clear and everything. So just going to fire off like 10 shots to prove it's working absolutely fine. That wasn't 10 shots, but you get the point. Absolutely fine. No slowdown at all. Right, so with that said, time to lob this in the freezer. Back in a minute, guys.
Tonight's forecast. A freeze is coming.
We are, in fact, now back from the freezer, and I have my ice-cold magazine, which is your bit condensating and shit. So I wouldn't recommend licking the magazine, because your tongue might stick to it. Freezing cold magazine. The time is now that. So it's been in there for about an hour and a half or something like that. So now we're going to put the mag into the gun and see how it performs. Now, to clarify, it was in -22. No magazine will run that cold, even power-up gas. Right, we're going to see how this one runs. Oh. Okay, interesting. -22. -22. Oh, that bulb is really quite cold. That was close. As you might have seen, once I started firing, with it being ice cold, the CO2 did actually start to slow down. I'm not sure exactly what shot it was. I'd probably estimate it was around the 10-15 shot mark. It actually would have failed the cycle. I was pulling the trigger, and it was coming back like that. Just far enough to disengage from the breech of the pistol. Then going back forward. Which means your round wouldn't cycle. So although it was, oh, my tongue was called funny. Although it might have looked like it was firing, in fact, it was not. So what's the moral of this story? Nothing really. There is no moral to this video. I just wanted to see what happened if you put a magazine in -22. So, if you live in particularly cold climates like Canada or something like that, during your coldest peaks in winter, these might be your option. They do run. I mean, bearing in mind that was -22. This is a really extreme test. It's not really fair to the magazine. So, if you live in somewhere that isn't literally an ice box, you should be fine. You should be alright. This magazine should last absolutely fine. I'd say probably down to -10. Down to 0 degrees, something like that. These really just absolutely kick ass. They're fucking awesome. If you were looking at CO2 magazines for your pistol, my advice, buy one, see how it runs. If you like it, switch. For me personally, I prefer the shot per shot consistency. That is good enough for me. If I have convinced any of you to give CO2 a shot, let me know in the comments down below. Tell me how you get on. Let me know if it was worth it for you, if you prefer it, if you hate it, or just generally want to let me know how much you hate me. That's fine by me. Guys, I have been Jake from Blowback Airsoft. I still got Corona, and I'm still going to make some fucking more videos just for you guys. Have a wonderful day. Adios.